Awesome. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Chiropractic Compass podcast. We are officially live with the famous Upper Cervical doctor here in Georgia, Dr. Adam Tedder. Welcome to the show, sir.
How's everybody doing? It might be a little more infamous than famous. I'm not sure which one is
Give yourself some credit. Give yourself some credit. So today we have the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Adam and all of his amazing work he's doing with Upper Cervical Chiropractic care. And but I want to start quickly and say welcome to the Chiropractic Compass podcast presented by the legendary Chiropractor. And I love to do a shameless plug here right at the beginning just to get the ball rolling. So if you are a chiropractor watching this or even a student, head to the legendarychiropractor.com. Check us out. Check out all that we do for and our offering for chiropractic students and doctors. And that's pretty much the end of my shameless plug. So, Doc, without further ado, as I spread this video across the Facebook world, can you please give yourself a further in-depth introduction of who you are, where you come from, and how you really got into chiropractic? What pulled on your heartstrings on this one?
Absolutely, man. First, I want to thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to share my passion, my vision for chiropractic and my experience in chiropractic. And like we were just talking about, there's a huge shift in chiropractic, especially in the students with just a fire and passion for the principle and the mastery of the technique and the art. And I've been a chiropractic patient or practice member, as you could say, for 21 years, man. And so as a 15-year-old kid, a principal doc explained the above, down, inside out philosophy, and it just made sense to me as a kid, so I started getting adjusted, and it really just transformed the whole path of my life, and so I've been getting adjusted now for 21 years. So it's given me an awesome life of health and vitality that I don't think many people in my generation have really experienced. And I never wanted to be a chiropractor, though. I'm a hands-on kind of guy. I didn't want to go to college. Like the thought of going to 8 years of school sounded terrible to me. And so I did a lot of different odd jobs. I did some construction. I actually went to school for landscape management, which is kind of a unique thing. And I realized how much I hated cutting grass and stuff. But and so I tried out a lot of different things. And I actually ended up getting a job at Georgia Power. And I worked on power lines and climbed 70-foot utility poles and did a lot of crazy stuff. And I loved the job, man. But then I fell one day about 30 feet and landed upside down hanging from a pole about 5 feet off the ground. And it was like a wake-up call, man. It was like, man, what am I doing? It's like I'm risking my life every day, and I'm not really going anywhere, And so I got an opportunity to kind of shift careers. And it was kind of interesting at that time. I was introduced to the philosophy of Upper Cervical Chiropractic, and that took my understanding to a deeper level. And I was invited to a knee, chest, upper cervical seminar. It was a philosophy night, and the whole time this dude's up there just talking about upper cervical and subluxation and BJ Palmer and all this stuff, man. It was like all these like light bulbs going off for me as far as like the true understanding of chiropractic. And I felt this conviction in my heart, and I knew that's where God wanted me to be and what I was supposed to be doing. And I quit my job on Monday and enrolled at Life University for undergrad. And that was the story's history, man. Now that was 2016.
Wow.
Or 2006, I'm sorry.
Wow.
So it's been a long time.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What a story. I mean, like, just dangling there from the power line, like, hey, you know what? I think it's time for a shift.
Bro, major. And I still have flashbacks, man. I'll be walking down the road and have that gut feeling come back, man. It was a traumatic event, but I got very lucky, and it's led me down this path. So
that's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. So before we get into any topics, I do want to relate to something that you said. You said you found out and you knew that you wanted to be a chiropractor when you were 15 years old. That is awesome. Yeah. I knew when I wanted to be a chiropractor was when I was 13 years old, and so I'm in the similar boat that you are, and it's so cool to have you on the show today. Just share your experience and your expertise, not only in upper cervical like chiropractic, but also from the perspective of, you've known you wanted to do this your whole life, and just this is where it's at. This is what you were told to do. You were called to chiropractic, like we always say, right? And it's like nothing tells you nothing tells you to change your career path than dangling, from 5 feet from the ground. I mean, I don't have a similar story to that, but that's amazing. I love that. I absolutely love that, Doc.
Yeah,
So with all things considered that you mentioned and your background, and I want to get into a little bit of why you chose upper cervical here in a little bit, but just not quite yet. Tell us, just to kind of break the ice for the audience, and tell people a little bit about yourself that many people probably don't know. Is it a specific hobby that you practice? Is it some special skill that you have, or something along those lines, something fun to share with the audience a little bit?
Yeah, so I actually have a second hobby turned career. I own a second company called Bench Dogs Custom Furniture, and I build high-end custom furniture. And I took a year off from chiropractic in 2016 when I had my daughter, and got into woodworking. And I actually me and my buddy started a company, and we're working on some pretty big things with that. So I love woodworking. It's almost like a stress reliever, and just an artistic outlet to allow me to spend some time doing something outside of the day-to-day grind of chiropractic, which is great, but you also need that outlet, and
100%.
So woodworking really has allowed me to express that.
That's great. I absolutely love that. I love hearing people say, chiropractic feeds or fuels your fire, right? But everyone needs that, second or third thing that's like, whew, we're good. Like, let's get back into it. Because then you come Monday, it comes Monday, and you're like, you didn't have chiropractic your whole weekend if you weren't at a seminar or conference or whatever, and you're ready to rock and roll because you had that rejuvenation period at home, and you were able to, kind of tap into your energy back in something else other than chiropractic. That's awesome, Doc. So without further ado, let's get into these topics. Number one topic, I'm just going to bullet list them, and we are going to break them down. So with that being said, becoming a upper cervical doctor. How did you become an upper cervical doctor? Why did you become an upper cervical doctor? We're going to cover it all right here. Why upper cervical is unique to not only the chiropractic profession, but also we're going to relate this to our patients, right? Why is upper cervical so awesome and so amazing for patients? Where does upper cervical fit into the chiropractic paradigm and the chiropractic market in today's day and age? I think that one's huge, and I can't wait to hear your answers on that. And is it easy to explain, or rather, how do you explain upper cervical chiropractic to prospective patients and new patients? And then Upper Cervical, obviously, Revolution, and how you can get involved with that. So for people watching right now, Dr. Adam runs and I believe co-owns and operates Upper Cervical Revolution, and that is like your little baby, which is amazing. So I'm so pumped to hear all about it. So let's dive in with number one, becoming an upper cervical doc. How did you find this path? And I understand that you went to Sherman, which kind of explains the beginning of some things. But what really made you hold on to it and become attached to it?
I think that we all, like we talked about earlier, we get called into certain things in our life, and I think we're presented with things, and we either run with it or we don't. And I was presented with this idea of upper cervical in chiropractic, and in particular it was knee, chest, upper cervical, and it just made sense, and the passion that was behind the doctors that were teaching it, and the stories that were told behind it as far as what patients experienced, and really just the all-encompassing idea that it is chiropractic. We talk about science, we talk about philosophy, and we talk about art. And what happens, I believe, in a lot of techniques is they focus on one of those, or they focus on two of those and not all of it. And to me, upper cervical truly encompasses all aspects of what was laid before us by our forefathers of what chiropractic really is, because it utilizes all of those aspects equally and not just part of the time or just as part of the aspect. It's everything. The science is just as important as the art, which is just as founded on the principle and the philosophy. And so it just really made sense to me. And so that's what, again, it was like, I can't explain it, man. It was just a conviction that this was what I was designed to do. And that's why I made the quick decision. I quit my job on Monday, man. I literally went to the seminar Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I quit my job on Monday and put my 2 weeks in.
Love it.
And I got in, then I enrolled at Life to finish my undergrad, and I always knew I was going to go to Sherman. That's where, for me, I'm from Atlanta. I'm from this area, so I want to get away for a bit. And it was a smaller school, upper cervical focus, all the different things that I was looking for in a school. I still support Life. Life's an amazing school too. But Sherman's my alma mater, so I gotta support that. And so Upper Cervical just made sense, and I dove all in. And I'm that kind of person, man. If I'm passionate about something, I'm going all in. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna learn it. I'm gonna master it, and then I'll expand out from that. But I think for me, it was just something that I could dive all into and really put all my energy into. And for me, as I learned more about chiropractic, I didn't even realize there were so many different techniques. I didn't realize there was such a vast array of approaches and philosophies and all these different ideas in chiropractic. And it can be very confusing, not only for students, but for docs and for our communities. And so what I love about Upper Cervical, it's very put together. It's very concise. It's very logical and linear, and it makes a lot of sense to me. And so when I got into school, I started the Upper Cervical Club at Sherman my first quarter. I just ran with it. I started teaching. I started getting people pumped up. I started doing a lot of stuff to expand it. Because even if you think about Sherman, the upper cervical work was not very big there yet, or at the time. And so I really had a passion for teaching and inspiring other students to get into it. And so now I have a bunch of my friends that practice upper cervical all over the country. And it's been really an awesome adventure.
Yeah, that's great. So I was not aware that you started the Upper Cervical Club at Sherman College of Chiropractic, which is so awesome to hear, because now I just went to BDC or Chiro Sushi summer camp in Miami, and I was surrounded by Sherman students, and I had the slightest idea that they were, it's more of an upper cervical based school, or, they love the philosophy just like Life does and everything. But there's something about that school that upper cervical presence has to it. And I applaud you for going out there on a limb and saying, you know what, this needs to be at this school. And I think it's awesome what you did there. So that's really cool. You definitely left an impact for generations to come, because it's talked about all the time. And I was surrounded by students, and I was like, holy cow, you guys are like C1, C2, everything else is extremities kind of people. Like, that's awesome. Yeah. Like, go you guys. Like, I'm about it. So that's great.
It's funny because, when I was there, I'm the kind that I get all in. I want to be an influencer. I want to learn as much as I can and grow as much as I can. And so I really tried to, again, leave an impact. And Sherman is an awesome school. It was founded on upper cervical. Tom Gilardi was an upper cervical toggle doc. And even Life University was actually started as an upper cervical school. Yeah. Sid Williams was an upper cervical guy. And I used to go to DE, and, my first DE was Dr. Sid's last DE. Wow. And so it was really awesome to be able to experience him. And to his last day, man, he was just as passionate and just had so much fire, man. It was amazing. Yeah. And, but yeah, man, I'd really enjoy, teaching. I think that's probably my favorite thing I get to do is teaching, students and other docs, and just sharing what I've got to learn and help them find that passion.
That is phenomenal. And I like what you said. You pointed out two schools that were founded on upper cervical. And I want to go back to something you said at the very beginning of the episode. It's the foundation, right? Like, it might be the top of the spine, but damn, it's the foundation of chiropractic. And, HIO, and you think of all of these different techniques. BJ was doing toggling and all that stuff way back in the day. And that is the core behind chiropractic. And like you said, we stand on these huge shoulders of giants, and they were all practicing chiropractic upper cervically back in the day, and especially Sid and DE and everything like that. So that's awesome, and it is the foundation. I want to make that very clear for people that it's about the whole entire health and well-being of the patient. But it's amazing what you can do and influence someone's life through, 2 or 3 bones in the upper cervical spine, which is pretty impactful. So
yeah. Well, the big thing, man, is it's not about the bones. It's about the nerve system.
It's true. Yeah.
And when you talk about the nerve system, the epicenter is the brainstem, and the upper cervical spine is directly in contact with that. And so, if you can make the biggest impact with the smallest input and the smallest force, I mean, why wouldn't you go to the upper cervical spine? And obviously there's like 200 different approaches in chiropractic, but
200, that's it.
That's it, right? But most of them are founded in the toggle recoil adjustment from BJ Palmer, and they all developed out of that. And the foundation, you can take those foundational components and apply that to every technique
Absolutely.
Under the sun. So it all goes back to that foundational concept.
100%, 100%. And I think that's like, now that I'm transitioning into, my peak experience and my externship, more and more, the doc I'm going to peak with he takes x-rays and, looking at these x-rays really seriously and in depth about, patient care and that care plan and how important it is when, that atlas is subluxated or, you're seeing this pressure that's being caused on the brainstem, like you said, it's direct pressure. So it's pretty impactful. So let's talk a little bit, because I think we're transitioning slowly into the next topic of why upper cervical is so unique, right? Like,
Absolutely.
why is it that people should not only care about upper cervical, but what is it that makes it so impactful for a patient?
Well, when you look at the anatomy, the upper cervical joint is the most complex joint and most dynamic joint in the entire body. But like BJ Palmer taught, when it subluxates, it's in a three-dimensional torque. So it gets stuck based on the anatomy, based on trauma, based on the meninges, based on everything in that area. So when we have that subluxation, it gets stuck in that position and it distorts everything. And, a lot of people say, oh, the base of the spine is the foundation. That may be true if we were a stationary object, like a house, A house doesn't move, so its foundation is the base, but we're mobile, and our brain is what controls how we interpret the environment. And so if it's distorted, it's going to distort everything else underneath it just to make sure that it can function and keep us alive. And so it's going to sacrifice posture. It's going to sacrifice alignment of the lower spine. It's going to sacrifice leg length equality, all these different things, all to get the brain and the cerebellum into a level position with the horizon. And so if you can restore that alignment, restore that balance, the whole body begins to shift underneath. And it's really cool to see these things, seeing lumbar scoliosis and stuff like that going away just by clearing the atlas, and it's about getting to the underlying problem. And we talk about this all the time in chiropractic,
Yep.
how we're adjusting the cause, yet most of the time, all the time, students are like, oh, I got a headache, I need to get adjusted. That's the most allopathic thought process in the world, And so it's not just about just getting adjusted. It's about clearing the nerve system and rebalancing the nerve system. The best way we can do that is through upper cervical, through specific adjusting, through specific x-rays to get the exact alignment, and then measuring our work through thermography, which is the science aspect of what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely love that. I wrote down 3 words, and they are compensation, because compensation is exactly what helps us, stay level. And then my second word that I wrote down was horizon. And we talk a lot about that in the office that I'm going to peak in, is like, everything happens, from you don't walk around like this, right? you walk around like this because everything else below it is shifting and compensating for what's happening up here. And then the last thing I wrote down is innate, right? Like, let's talk about that for like 4,000 hours. But like, let's just dive deep into innate quick and like talk to us a little bit about why these things happen. Why are compensations taking place in the spine, and why do we want to stay parallel with our horizon? Because it's easy for us to say because we get it. We get the big idea. We understand the body. We understand biomechanics. But to a patient, it's like, what? It feels like I'm walking around like this, doc. Like, I mean, but like it can be difficult to explain. So that innate intelligence, innate wisdom. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, when you talk about chiropractic philosophy, and we talk about this a lot in Revolution, universal intelligence, its ultimate objective is the preservation of the universe. And so it's ultimately destructive because it destroys things in order to create things. Mm-hmm. Whereas our innate intelligence is inherently concerned with preserving our body and preserving our life. And so our job as chiropractors is we're not bone movers. We don't set bones. We make specific adjustments to unlock subluxation, and the ultimate objective is to entice innate. And Dr. Kale, who's one of the foundational knee chest doctors, talked about our job is not to move a bone from A to B. It's to entice that person's innate to kick in and allow their body to heal and remove that interference and then get out of the way. Mm-hmm. It's not to make a million adjustments over and over and over again. It's to make the right adjustment at the right time to get that adjustment to hold, to keep the nerve system clear, so that innate can actually get to work. Yes. And ultimately, we're not the ones making the adjustment. Our job is to allow innate to set that alignment and get it solid and get it into a stable position.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that idea just like totally changed my whole thought process, because we always talk about moving bones, and it's not about moving bones because you can teach a monkey to move a bone, but it's about making specific adjustments that are made at the right time, at the right line of drive, and have a stay put holding value that allows the body to heal. And this is something else with upper cervical, man. I went to a chiropractor for 8 years that was a full spine doc, principal doc, awesome chiropractor. But I was getting adjusted like 2 or 3 times a month or 2 or 3 times a week for like 8 years, because I was taught the adjustments would get you better. And when I went to this upper cervical conference, man, all they talked about was holding your alignment. I was like, what does that even mean? But the thought process, man, if we get adjusted on Monday and we're out of alignment again Wednesday with the same subluxation, we're out again Friday with the same subluxation, and again on Monday, when are we healing? When is innate getting stronger? When are we allowing the body to actually hold its alignment and get better? And that concept, because in volume 18, BJ Palmer's volume 18, he talks about the definition of a subluxation, which is MOPI, right? The misalignment, occlusion, pressure on the nerve, and interference. One of the things he talks about that most people leave out because it doesn't fit within their paradigm is permanency. The only place you get permanent subluxation is in the upper cervical spine. Everything else is a compensation. And so, again, all these concepts in upper cervical, man, were just like, it was just firing off, man. It made me so excited. But if we can get specific in what we do and get the subluxation clear and get it to hold for a period of time, people get well from all kinds of crazy stuff, man. I've seen the craziest stuff in my practice. And I know we all do. And chiropractic's amazing. And I'm very big on, I'm not a dogmatic person. So I always say there's no chiropractic police. And so my biggest thing is that you're doing specific work for your patients and you're not just doing rack and crack them old school chiropractic. You're making specific adjustments with objective measures to know when and when not to adjust and getting out of the way and allowing your patients to hold. And that's really the ultimate goal is for all of us to hold ourselves accountable to that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a bigger conversation than we have time for tonight. We can go way deep into that. But and you talked about the disorganization of the universe and universal intelligence constantly destroying things in a positive way, right?
Yeah.
And we call that entropy, right? That disorganized system becoming, this end result that we see, right? And so our bodies are the same way. Exactly what you said. Our bodies are constantly trying to heal us and keep us well and we're always in this, especially if you talk about autonomic nervous system, and we're trying to fight for our lives and we're trying to survive. Our body's most basic instinct is to survive on this planet.
Absolutely.
If we can do that any way that it knows how to get oxygen in, CO2 out, that's what it's going to do, no matter what kind of compensations, biomechanically, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, no matter what, that's going to happen to make us survive on this planet. So,
what it's all about.
Yeah, I absolutely loved what you said there. I absolutely loved what you said about the disorganization in the universe because I don't feel like a lot of people dive that deep into the principles anymore, and I think we really need to start doing that again, right?
Absolutely.
And then I want to mention one last thing before we get into chiro marketing and where upper cervical fits into that, and that's teaching. You said you love to teach, right? And that's what these podcasts are all about. That's why I bring people on like you who specialize in such a unique and powerful area and category and niche in chiropractic that you have so much wisdom and insight that students want to hear and need to hear. And that's the whole point of this. It's I love having people like you on so you can just share your wisdom and teach because that's exactly what you're doing here. And obviously we hope that people go to Upper Cervical Revolution and learn more from you. But even if they just listen to this podcast 200 times, you'll get something new every single time you listen to this. And that's what I was telling you before we came on the show. And that's really what I love about doing these interviews. So thank you for being here again.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm humbled. I was blessed to have a lot of great mentors in my life, and I feel as doctors, doctor means teacher. So my job is to teach, and it's not just to doctor people, but it's to help them understand how their body gets sick, but more importantly, how do we get well and how do we stay well? And then as far as the chiropractic profession, my job is to help students realize their potential too.
Yeah.
And be able to serve at a higher level. And that's really the ultimate objective there.
100%. So let's dive into upper cervical fitting into the chiropractic market today. In today's day and age, things are changing. People love chiropractic. Like, let's start there, right? Like, people love chiropractic and they get it, right? And so how does Upper Cervical fit into that market? And how are you going about, branding, marketing in your community to help other people out and get them into your office?
Well, I think what most people they're tired of having no answers from doctors. The answer is always medicine, it's always therapy, it's always surgery, but there's no answer.
Yeah.
There's no solution. And I think that what chiropractic gives is a solution to a major issue in our world, and that's stress, man. We have so much stress in this world.
Nah.
Yeah, zero, right? But I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Tolsky.
I am. Yes.
Dr. Tolsky is an awesome dude. I had him come to my office and teach a course, and we spent more time talking about philosophy than I think we did technique. But he brought up an amazing idea that really transformed my thinking. He talks about something called perceived stress. And, our brain and our nerve system, our central nervous system responds to stress the same way, no matter what the stress is. Because its job, again, is to keep us alive. And so things that we deal with in our world, which is like social media and a time clock and traffic and school and all these things we deal with, are not life or death scenarios. But the chronic nature of it, our brain responds the same way. So it's creating the same pathologic processes in our body that we don't attribute to the little chronic stress that we're encountering every day. And so part of what we deal with, and when you get in the real world, student life is a bubble. And when you get in the real world, you'll realize really how lost and how sick people are and how just derailed they have been by the medical system. And our job is to bring them back on track and help them realize that. And we're not here to cure and make everything go away. And we're never going to have all good days. But just understanding how the body works and how it heals and the potential that we have, there's always potential. In Revolution, we say with every breath of life, there's hope. And that's our mission, because if we can increase someone's existence by 10%, it changes their whole life. Yeah. And so in the chiropractic market now in our communities, people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's just what it is, man. And they're looking for answers. They're looking for a solution. And chiropractic is that. And Upper Cervical is just a unique part of that from a neurological standpoint. I really see a lot of neurological cases like fibromyalgia and like MS and Parkinson's and things like that. And then we see like sports injuries and things like that where people are having these major traumas. You'd be surprised how many people have, traumatic experiences, whether it's emotional or physical or whatever it is, that they're holding on to in their nerve system. And the freeing nature that happens when they start getting adjusted is really beautiful. And Upper Cervical in particular is I always equate it to surgery. Why would someone want to go to school and be a brain surgeon versus just a general surgeon? They both are amazing arts and they both have their place. But in chiropractic, we have different niches and different focuses, and one's not better than the other, but we just focus a little bit different. And so you have people that focus in sports, you have people that focus in peds, you have people that focus in just general chiropractic. And for me, Upper Cervical is just one of those focuses. It's more neurologically based. We're really measuring and checking that nerve system to make sure that it's healthy. We're not just moving bones around. Right. We're making specific adjustments to get that nerve system healthy. And when you explain that to people, and then you explain the upper cervical misalignment and compensation, and you can show them that on x-ray, it just blows their mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And where do you think, to kind of dive deeper into actually chiropractic and stay out of, the public realm right now, because we'll get into that in the next topic here. But where in the chiropractic market, right? Where are students interested? Are you finding that the trends are coming back? Because we always say history repeats itself, right? And so the upper cervical trend, I feel like, is progressively increasing as I've even started school and progressed through. It's like I'm seeing more and more students involved in upper cervical work and loving knee chest, which I didn't think, would be a thing. And I'm like, holy cow, my whole world is opened, and I this is amazing, right? So talk to us a little bit how it fits in the exact chiropractic market.
Well, chiropractic has gone through many evolutions, and in my mind, whatever BJ Palmer was doing, I think we all should be doing. There's no one that did more for chiropractic than BJ Palmer, spent more of their life dedicated to researching it and making it more scientific. And whatever adjustment he wanted for himself till the day he died, I'm going to learn that technique.
Yeah.
that was knee chest, and knee chest is not the only specific there's a lot of upper cervical techniques. There's a lot of full spine techniques that are specific. But when you get to experience a knee chest adjustment that's done right at the right time, it's unlike anything you'll ever experience. And it's life changing. And the energy that's happening in chiropractic right now is the movement for artistry. And I think that students are really yearning for something more than just the mechanics. They're wanting to be masterful. They want to be artful. And I think that's why Kairos is so big. There's so many huge philosophical movements happening in the profession. And I think that that's really what's spearheading it. When you start looking at science and you start looking at neurology and all these different things, and you look at the spine, it's always going to lead you to the upper cervical. So I think when you start investigating, you start searching, this is what happened with BJ Palmer, is everything was pushing him to the upper cervical because that's where everything starts. And so I think that's naturally happening just from the focus that's happening with the students and with the influence that's coming from the profession. And I think the people that are pouring back into the schools now is not really people selling products anymore. It's people selling the principle and getting students fired up about chiropractic again and getting away from what's the next big gimmick and what's true about the principle.
Yeah.
And again, when you look at the principle, it always goes back to the nerve system. It always goes back to the upper cervical spine. And I don't care if you do full spine or upper cervical only, you need to know what you're doing in that area. Mm-hmm. And to know that you know is the difference in getting someone clear and just moving bones around.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think you nailed it on the nose. And it really comes down to, right, and you were like, people are selling the principles, people are selling the philosophy, and that's true. And I will, vouch for us chiropractic students. There isn't a day that goes by that we're not being sold to. So it's like,
sure. Yeah.
Whatever you're selling, it's going to chiropractic students, and you know that. I mean, you went to Life, you went to Sherman, you know the experience, the clubs, the groups, the coaching groups, all of that stuff is out there.
Yeah.
But you made a very solid point, and I think that people are attracted more and more, just like the public is perceiving, the perception of chiropractic is changing, and it's maybe not changing, but they're more accepting, right, of chiropractic and what we do and what we can do for them and their families. And then it's kind of the same with if you go to the chiropractic student, right? It's like, okay, whatever old way isn't working, and we've now seen that, and now we can go to, because we had like that whole, hoopla with like bad associateships and all this stuff and blah, 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 blah. And then you go into now selling principles and philosophy and going back to the basics of chiropractic and BJ and Didi and all of this stuff, Sid, Fred Barge, all of the legends, as I like to call them, and the legendary chiropractor. That's what it's all about. That's what people are getting pumped up about. So thank you for bringing that up. That's awesome. And I do think that it has a very specific time. It's a very specific time for upper cervical practitioners to be getting into upper cervical. It's a really great time as well, because especially as the public perception is shifting towards acceptance of chiropractic, it's also shifting towards new ways, or old ways for us, but new ways to them, like knee chest, like Atlas orthogonal, like these other modalities or techniques that they maybe have not seen before that work, right? That work really, really well. And so I think people are more accepting. They're not like, oh, what is that? That looks weird. It's like, oh, that can help me? Okay, deal. It's like
that's all they care about, man. They want to be well.
Exactly.
They're attracted to that.
Yes, 100%. So sorry, I just went off on a tangent, but let's
You're
get
good,
back.
Man. It's all good.
Let's get back. So is it? I want to ask, and this was kind of one of our topics, but I'll ask you. When we're talking about new patients or even prospective patients, if you're doing screenings as an upper cervical doc, or if you're just out in the grocery store and someone stops you and asks you, or like you get in a conversation and they ask, what do you do? Oh, I'm a chiropractor. Whoa, okay. What do you do like as a chiropractor? And so how do you communicate that with the patient or prospective patient, especially not only to get them in your office, but to keep them there so that they keep coming back and they understand that getting checked is the most important thing they can do in their life?
Absolutely. And I always start by saying, they always say, are you a chiropractor? I say, yeah, I'm a chiropractor that focuses in upper cervical. And they're like, they hear upper cervical, like, what does that mean? And,
Hooked.
and so, but a good trick here is anytime you say upper cervical to someone who has no idea what that is, you always point at your neck, because you say, I focus on upper cervical, because then you could talk about you're looking at the top of the neck. And so that takes them away from whatever their mind is wandering to, and say, I focus in the upper cervical spine. Or you can just ask, I specialize in the cervical spine, chiropractic. And so that helps them understand that that's the area you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And again, just like we talked about before, man, number one, you keep things simple. You keep things focused on the nerve system and on the anatomy. And we talked about, just real briefly, we talked about how that bone can twist out of place. There's no locking joints. And so it puts direct pressure onto the spinal cord, and that creates a distortion between the brain and the body. And over time, the body grows sick. And that can be every nerve that goes to your body passes through the atlas, the top bone. So it can literally affect any and every part of your body over a period of time. And so I explained that we do three-dimensional x-rays. We look at specificity. There's 274 different misalignments that can happen, and our care is tailored to you. So it's not everyone gets the same adjustment on our table. Every adjustment we give each individual is individualized to them. Yeah. And so we can customize not only the adjustment, but the care plan and the stabilization that we expect for you, and put together a specific plan for you.
Yeah.
And so we can explain that. And you talk about thermography and pattern work, and explain how we're measuring the nerve system, and we don't adjust every time. Our ultimate goal is to get the spine in alignment and keep it that way. And that they really love. Mm-hmm. They love that they're getting better. They're not having to get the same thing over and over again. And it builds value. That our goal is to actually see you less. Our goal is to get you in alignment and get your body healing, and get you back to your life. And I think the old idea of seeing someone 3 times a week for 6 months is kind of out, man. Like, for me, that's too much. And a lot of the neurology studies coming out are showing that we're over adjusting people. Yeah. You can't over adjust somebody, right. And it short circuits the brain and can start causing other issues. So we have to be specific in our work and make adjustments as they're needed, not just because they're on the table.
Absolutely. So I wrote down a word just as you ended there. So what would you say, because the big word we throw around in chiropractic, right, is neuroplasticity. So talk to me a little bit about neuroplasticity and how it pertains to upper cervical work, and that, like you said, kind of over-adjusting or short circuits the brain. I really appreciate you saying that, because I do think it's true, and I do think many times chiropractors over-adjust, but that neuroplasticity component is huge for chiropractic patients' care and holding the adjustments. So talk to us a little bit about that and how that plays a role in your care.
Absolutely. So first thing we have to understand is an adjustment is actually a trauma. And so it's a constructive trauma, but it's a trauma. And so if you input that force at the wrong place at the wrong time or too often, it always sends a signal to the brain, and the brain's going to respond, because the brain's like a sponge. It's a sensory organ. So it's always responding to the environment and the things that's happening to it. So that's why it's so important to have a systematic way of knowing when to adjust and when not to adjust. So you're working with that system, not against that system. And like Dan Murphy, his de safe orientation model is we could talk about that for days, but it's mind blowing, and it's transformational in the way that we see the nerve system, because we used to think it was a finite thing, and it's really not. It's always changing and adapting. Yeah. And part of the biggest thing with upper cervical is reducing the distortion on the brainstem and rebalancing the way that the brain communicates, and also restoring blood flow to the brain. That's where a lot of research is showing now with upper cervical is the decreased blood flow that's happening in the skull. And so if the brain's not getting proper blood flow, it's gonna deteriorate. Yeah. And that can show up as all kinds of different health issues. And so as we get the brain healthier, it begins to adapt, and it begins to do what it's supposed to do and truly respond to the environment in a healthy way, instead of always just being in that fight or flight. Yeah. And so neuroplasticity, as we learn more about it, is really, I think, what ultimately is going to be our selling point in the future as we know more and more about it, and why chiropractic on a regular basis is so important to allow the brain to stay clear and to be able to do what it needs to do and adapt as it needs to.
Yeah. And you keep saying throughout this entire interview and episode is deliver the right adjustment at the right time. And I think that, when you said that, we could short circuit the brain and neuroplasticity and all this stuff, like that moment in time when a patient comes in, that's why regular chiropractic care is so important, right? Like them coming in to get checked is so necessary, because when they lay down on the table and they do need to be adjusted, we know that through objective measures and through, palpatory skills or whatever you're using in your office to get to that standpoint of, yes, you need to be adjusted. Like, that is so critical when we talk about right time, right place at the right time. Like, that
Absolutely.
is huge for them.
Yeah, man. And we use Titronics, the Titron scanner. And to me, that's the only instrument on the market that you can actually do pattern work with.
Okay.
It's an amazing instrument. And the issue is most schools don't teach the value. They don't teach the proper procedures on how to do a scan and ultimately interpret the scan. That to me is one of the things about Revolution, is that we spend as much time talking about the scan as we do the adjustment. Because the scan is what, again, is going to let you know if they actually need to be adjusted or they don't. And that's a game changer. And that's, we've got to be doing some sort of form of pattern work, and you can't palpate a subluxation.
Right.
You can palpate the effects of a subluxation, but you can't actually palpate the misalignment. And we look at more on the pattern work. You can palpate and look at different muscular changes that happen. You look at the pattern work with the scan, and I do leg checks as well in my practice. I need all of those things to add up before I make an adjustment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that follows, toggle protocol, Grostic protocol, knee chest protocol. You name it. It's upper cervically. You got to have at least, I would argue, 3 things before you're adjusting and that you're checking prior to adjusting, which is awesome. So, last but not least, let's dive deep into Upper Cervical Revolution. Tell us all about Upper Cervical Revolution, how people, and we'll get to how people can get more information and stuff when your next seminar's coming up. But talk to us from the very, very beginning of where it came from and why you began this, not only because you love teaching and you love helping students, but also what does this mean for chiropractic? So start us at the beginning and go with that.
Absolutely. I wish I could take credit for Revolution, but I can't. My partner, Dr. Ian Davis Tremaine, out in San Francisco, he's actually in Mill Valley, which is just north of San Francisco. His life was changed through a knee chest adjustment. He had insomnia issues and things, and he got one knee chest adjustment. It just changed his whole life.
Wow.
And so he started training in some knee chest groups and things, and there was just a big push. There was a lot of students that were looking to learn the knee chest work, and so he started teaching the program out of his office in California. And he would have just huge groups, 40, 50 students out there learning this work, and just had a huge influence. And there are several knee chest groups in our profession that are teaching different forms of knee chest. And what we really pride ourselves on is we're teaching what Dr. Kale taught. And so knee chest obviously began with B.J. Palmer, and it was transferred to Dr. Lyle Sherman, who Sherman College is named after. And then it transferred to Dr. Kale, who is Dr. Sherman's right-hand man. And so Dr. Kale taught a bunch of docs, and then after he passed away, there was kind of this a split. And so there's a few different camps that are teaching knee chest, and they all have their value. They all have some great information. What we try to stick to is Dr. Kale's notes, and we teach it as he taught it, and we teach the fundamentals. And one of the things with knee chest in particular, but really any technique, is that you can't learn it in a weekend. If you think you can learn a technique in a weekend, you probably shouldn't be doing that technique. And so knee chest and any upper cervical techniques is very deep. It's there's a lot that goes into it. And we spend a series of modules building on everything. So first weekend, we get into adjusting, we get into x-ray, we get into neurology, we get into scanning. We start building these foundations throughout the whole process. Then we send you home with homework, and you work on these things through the process. And so it's something we build. And so the adjustment also is going to be different for each unique individual. So I'm 5'8". B.J. Palmer was 5'6", and this adjustment was designed for him, right? And so for really tall people, we have to adapt the adjustment so they can do it without hurting themselves. And so we are able to adapt the adjustment for each individual person that takes our course and allow them to be able to perform this adjustment over and over and over again without injuring their body. And so to me, Revolution is comprehensive. We go over business. The last module is a business module. So we go over how we have all this stuff for the adjustment, but how do we implement that into our practice?
Yeah.
And so it's just a really comprehensive program. It's 5 modules, and we just added in an advanced module that Dr. Ian's going to be teaching this year. And so we really mentor these students and docs to become masterful in this work. And I say masterful because no one's truly a master.
Right.
We're human, right? And I think that anyone that touts themselves as a master might have other alternative agendas. But I think we all are students. We're all constantly learning. We're all growing in this. And B.J. Palmer, who knew more about chiropractic than anybody, was constantly learning and constantly evolving. And I think we have to do the same and hold ourselves accountable for that training. And so Revolution, and now we teach it in Georgia, South Carolina, Kansas City, St. Louis, and San Francisco. So we kind of teach it all over the country at different times. Our next module for Atlanta is coming up August 17th and 18th at my office. Each module is $175, so it's affordable. For students, if they sign up early, they get a early bird discount, so it's $25 off each module, so it allows them to get a little bit more of an affordable option for the modules. They can also pay up front, and you basically get a free module if you pay for it all up front.
Awesome.
But we go through everything from start to finish. We have first quarter students all the way up. We've had a few docs come through that have been in practice 20 years, and they're switching from full spine to upper cervical. So it's a cool dynamic that we have in our groups, because we have brand new people and we have people that are veterans that bring different viewpoints to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. What a great program. I absolutely love that you guys are doing that. Dr. Ian, who, if you're out there, thank you for starting that. That's great. I've been, good friends with the person who connected us since we started school, or since we began school. And so I'm so glad that he connected us. I'm so glad to have you on the show. And last but not least, Doc, August 17th, 18th, head to www.ucrevolution.com. Is that correct?
Absolutely,
Awesome.
Yeah, and you can get all the event details there. I also want to give a shout out to my boy Andy Bird. He practices up in Nashville. He's going to be teaching with me August 17th and 18th. He's a rock star, and we have such a great time teaching together. And he brings so much to the table, so we're really excited to have him. He's a big Kairos guy, and he brings a lot to the event, so we're super excited to have him teaching with me.
That's awesome. Well, Doc, quick shameless plug before I thank you and cut off the show. But everyone out there, thank you so much for watching. We had so many people hopping on. I don't know who was hitting the hearts or the likes or whatever, but you can just keep hitting them. And the program I use just tallies them all up. So we got to like 426 hearts and 255
nice.
likes. So I don't know. And obviously I'll go back and look at the video, and it'll be like 4 likes. And I'm like, wait, there was just like one person that was just like smashing the like button. So
it's probably Ian. He loves me.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for doing that. That's awesome. Those of you that shared this, thank you for sharing this. Those of you that viewed this, the entirety of it, or just tuned in, thank you so much for being with us. This is the official first episode of season 3 of the Chiropractic Compass podcast, brought to you by the legendary Chiropractor online community. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned. Tomorrow afternoon, we are interviewing at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time, Dr. Barbara Eaton. So please, please, please be on at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time to check out what Dr. Barb has to say tomorrow. She's been on every season so far, and she loves coming on here, crushing it, and giving value. So last but not least, if you are a doctor out there looking for an associate, please consider posting to our legendary chiropractic job board. We would love to host your associateship opportunity on our job board, because we have a massive student audience that is looking for jobs and gigs all around the world, all around the country. So if you are a doctor looking for an associate, please hit me up, or you can head to postachiropracticjob.com/the legendary chiropractor. So with that being said, and the shameless plugs being over, August 17th and 18th, Upper Cervical Revolution happening here in Atlanta, Georgia, with Dr. Adam Tedder. Head to www.ucrevolution.com to get all of the event details. Sign up, and I believe Dr. Adam said that there's a little discount if you pay in full right away. So hop on there, head over there, and learn Upper Cervical from some of the best in the profession, because it's really important and it's an up and coming, not up and coming again, I said that, but it's history is repeating itself. It is becoming one of the most talked about and most utilized chiropractic techniques out there by chiropractic students and newly recent graduates, which I think is amazing. So, Doc, any last words, any words of wisdom that you can offer students, since we have such a large student population here, that you'd like to throw out before you head out?
Yeah, I think that I wrote this down before we started talking. I think that one of my favorite BJ Palmer quotes is that no one can anchor to an unanchored mind. And I think as a student, the time to dig in is now, because when you get out of school, it's 10 times as busy, it's 10 times as hard, it's 10 times as stressful. So take the time to hone your craft, to learn as much as you can, and to really dig in and invest in yourself with technique, with philosophy, with business, all the different things. Dig in now and put the time in.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Doc. Thank you so much again for being on the show. I appreciate you. Thank you all for watching the Chiropractic Compass podcast. And thank you so much for staying tuned tomorrow at 1:45 p.m. with Dr. Barbara Eaton. I have interviews booked. I just want to make this very clear for people. I have interviews booked. Dr. Adam has probably seen the document, but it is completely filled, and I'm actually adding days for people to get in there, which is awesome. It is so awesome. So we're booked like 3 or 4 days or 3 or 4 nights a week through mid-September. So please join us again on the Chiropractic Compass podcast and Facebook Lives here, typically at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. But tomorrow's going to be special with Dr. Barb at 1:45 p.m. Eastern. Dr. Adam, thank you for being on here.
Thank you.
UCRevolution.com. Head there now and get your tickets. See you guys. John and Dr. Adam are out.